Hey everyone, welcome to Degen Hour. I know Steven's just in another meeting, so he'll probably join in a bit. Just want to say welcome. Want to start off with the disclaimer that I start off with every week. And basically the disclaimer is that whatever you see on the show, it's not for financial advice, it's for entertainment purposes only. So while we'll go through some financial concepts and tell you quite a few things, it's just important to note that this isn't really, it's definitely not take this as your financial broker, or if you want independent financial advice, probably good to seek someone to help you with that, which we can provide. So basically, while I wait for Steven, I'll talk about a few ideas that I had for this show. So currently, we're seeing a very big GameFi explosion on Avalanche, and what we're seeing is, you're getting a lot of GameFi projects coming in. Ascenders, I think I saw the other day, which looks very cool. So maybe what I'll do is, while we wait for Steven, I can share my screen and we can start going through just like a few of the kind of upcoming games that'll be on Avalanche. So I'm just gonna share Brave, which is over here. So sorry, I was just doing some Defender stuff. And if you actually look at Ascenders, this is one of the games that there's Steven there. Let me just open them up. Hey Steven, how's it going?
Good. I still have the old logo Pangolin shirt, so rocking it.
Okay, cool. Where did you see it? Where did I?
What was that?
The old logo. Sorry, like where?
I got it. I'm repping it right here.
Oh, nice. I've got the old one on like a hoodie I'm gonna wear in Barcelona, like if the weather's cold enough.
Nice.
Are
you looking at Ascenders right now?
Yeah, exactly. So like I went through the disclaimer saying obviously it's not financial advice and everything's for educational purposes. And then I thought, we could just, we don't take a very formal approach to this. Like I thought today we could just go through a few games. Maybe if we wanted to, we could talk about how we could potentially write bots for games. But yeah, I thought we could just kind of free flow it a little bit.
For sure. Did Ascenders put up a white paper? I don't know if I've actually gotten to a point of digging in at that level, but I was totally thrown by the level of graphics after they're coming to Avalanche.
Yeah, you can see there's a lot of Zelda in this, like, which makes me incredibly happy. But like I haven't seen much documentation.
It's very interesting.
Players develop the land.
My big question for everything like gaming, because a lot of things still today are transactions happen. Like everything you do is a transaction. More and more, I think there's games that are like using Unity or Unreal Engine, like Unreal 5 or whatever, to actually make a normal gaming experience. But then you're using those engines as like your trusted state. And then maybe at the end of the game, it says like, Justin beat Steven really badly in this game of chess. And like, it's like, that's like the actual transaction part of it.
So it's actually such a great segue, and this is why I love having DJ hours with you, mate. Like, because you always bring up these awesome ways. Like, so I was talking to this dude last night. Actually, I'll give him a little shout out. He was one of the hackathon participants, and he actually Dennis created this game, and we were talking about it last night. Like, how do you do these sorts of things? And you're 100% right. Like, so state in the game. So let's look at a save game. So let's say I'm playing Ascenders and I want to save my progress in like a PlayStation or Switch or Steam game. You would save your save game on the cloud somewhere. So now, like what we've seen with Russia is like, let's say, for example, there was some mythical corporation that didn't want you to play the game. They could just kind of take your save game off the cloud and you'd lose all your progress. Or like if you're in like an online game, maybe some centralized entity takes all of your kind of like progress that you've made over like 2 years. And that can happen, right? Like, and that can happen even with block or GameFi projects, if they're storing their state off chain, you're immediately open to someone doing shady stuff.
And there's like a balancing act somewhere in here, right? Like, if I was talking to, because like Pangolin's so deep on GameFi, and we talk with so many GameFi protocols, every day, every week. There's a lot of really just like deep conversations happening. A couple of people have pointed out to me, and this, I didn't ever get too far into it, but people have pointed out to me that like Unreal and Unity have both like made some like product decisions that like sort of indicate that they're trying to support NFT gaming into the future. But at the same time, there is sort of like a mild centralization risk that like, if you build on these platforms, that you're, one day you can get rugged. You don't have a physics engine anymore. You have to try to figure out how you build the whole thing from scratch.
So I
But
think
the assets would still be like, truly owned by people.
So I think the answer is zero knowledge. So the way that I envisage it is, let's say you play in Ascenders, and now Ascenders needs to save quite a lot of data. But what you do is so data is expensive on the chain. So when you're paying gas, it's because what happens is you're storing state on the chain. So that's what the more computational intensive tasks you do, the higher the gas goes. That's why when you go play on different protocols, you're going to have variable gas fees, because you get charged for complexity of computation and storage. And storage is very expensive on chain, because if you got to think about it, like let's say there's like 1,000 nodes, like there is in Avalanche, and they've all got to store the same stuff. It's like expensive for them to run these nodes. So I think if you look at Ethereum, I think the state of Ethereum is something like 320 gigs. So if you spin up like an Ethereum full client, like it takes a week. Even Avalanche, if you spin up like an Avalanche node, it'll take like a few days, like running. And that's because it's kind of syncing state locally. So that's the problem. But what zero knowledge does is it can actually shrink that state into a proof and then just store that proof. That's what like zero knowledge rollups do. So if you think about like these layer 2s and stuff, right? So you got Ethereum, and then you've got like these kind of what they call like layer 2s or rollups, and there's all these terms. And then the zero knowledge snaps that state and then pushes it back into the main chain. So it's a way to kind of like make things secret, as well as kind of wrap large data into a smaller structure. So the thing is, I think you could actually wrap game state on chain using something like Starks. And then the thing is, then you'd record the state of the game on chain. Now that it raises some interesting questions about then, does that subnet or extra blockchain need to be gasless? Because if you wrap in constant game up, let's say you're playing like an online, like a real-time strategy game. Like let's say we're playing like a real-time Civilization. There's probably like 10 different players doing different things. And all of those things are getting recorded as state constantly. So then if you're charging gas, that's not going to be very cool.
Yeah, someone would be having a bad time, or it doesn't necessarily need to be users that are paying for gas, but someone's paying for that computation to be happening. Like theoretically, if we wanted to make the Pangolin game tomorrow, like we could make a subnet and do it there, and we could just front the cost of it like a freemium model. But that would be pretty expensive to be like logging every footstep to update location, and like every time you build a barracks or a town hall or something like that, that like there's all sorts of things that could be exploited, right? It's like, what if like I was able to, like front run you, and it's like you put a barracks down on square 4-4, like maybe I put it there right before, and then like all of a sudden, like, I don't know, there's all sorts of things that could happen in that situation. So I think like full like real-time strategy and stuff like this, where there's like, multiplayer things happening. I don't know how it would work if it's like every bit of state is on chain. I just don't see it yet.
Yeah.
Even with zero knowledge proofs, it's still going to be an extreme cost. So like if you wanted to like, 60 frames per second kind of thing, like when you like shoot a bullet in like Halo, it like, that's a lot of data, like a lot of state updates.
Yeah. So gas serves a few purposes, right? It also serves as security. But let's say I mean like I'm gonna probably show my age here. But when I was like young, like and growing up in South Africa, like what we did, like me and my mate, like we had like Doom came out, and like we had like a computer class, and like no one in the school did it. There was only like 2 of us. So like every day we got like a free period. So what we did was we'd go to the computer rooms, and then like we installed Doom on all of the PCs, and then we networked it. So then what would happen is like all the older kids, they would come into the computer room and would play Doom. But now like imagine that scenario on your own personal blockchain, because blockchain as a service is going to become a thing, right? Like, so for a long time it was like, you know, if you wanted to do a blockchain, you'd write some shady 2007 white paper, you know, you'd ask for millions of dollars, and then like ultimately you probably wouldn't deliver a blockchain. Like it's super hard making a blockchain. Like it's super hard. But now I think what's going to happen is you'll see it with subnets, right? Eventually it'll get to a point where like anyone can roll a subnet or their own blockchain. So let's say me and Steven have our own game, and we want to have our own session. We could theoretically just create our own blockchain, put the game on there, and only play with like ourselves and like maybe some close friends. Similar to that kind of like LAN networking that gaming used, or PC gaming used to do.
So interesting. So like, can I grill you on the zero knowledge proof stuff? Like, I don't know. I started like making a game once. Like I've definitely twice paid for an Apple developer license and like never actually shipped anything. I'm the business guy, by the way. I'm not the dev. That'd be alarming if it wasn't the case. But so like, you know, I think like turn-based games might have their like, you know, might be like earlier low-hanging fruit for like blockchains of today to like be like every second of the game, every move can actually be an updated state. And you could probably find a way to do that for extremely cheap. But like, do you think at any point in time, like you would entirely rely on like for like a fast-paced like strategy game? Do you ever think you would truly rely exclusively on the blockchain for managing that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think so. The short answer is, I mean,
eventually, like it could, the costs of gas could just get so low theoretically if you didn't have a ton of validators in a certain system.
I don't even think it's the cost of gas. So this is something that I've been trying to work out with arbitrage for Camelot, right? So actually, anyway, I met someone, a little bit of alpha. I think we actually have now a viable pathway to Camelot. So if you're watching, Camelot is looking pretty slick at the moment. But so one of the big questions I'm having with Camelot is how does a bot take an arbitrage opportunity quicker than an off-chain? So let's say you got 2 bots. You got bot like, you know, centralized bot, and you got decentralized bot. Centralized bot, when they see an arbitrage opportunity, so let's talk about an arbitrage, right? So they see that Bitcoin is at $30,000, but on Binance it's 40,000. So they can buy it at 30,000 on like, I don't know, Pangolin, and then sell it on Binance for 40,000 and make a quick 10K. So that's what arbitrage is, right? So let's say now I'm a bot, I'm centralized, I can take that call immediately. If I'm a decentralized bot, I have to submit that transaction and get consensus from all the other bots before I can take the trade. I will never be competitive enough to beat that centralized bot because it can just act with autonomy, and that the consensus adds a layer of latency. So in that use case, there's no ways an arbitrage bot, decentralized arbitrage bot, will ever remain competitive. Even if you chuck it up at Solana, or you do like or you juice it to the gills, it's just the fundamentally the design space favors centralized bots. Just what it is, right?
So, like, you know, off-chain bots, like, you know, like you don't need to build something that like realizes that it's supposed to do something on chain. Like it's not like, you know, watching for, you know, usually like you make some sort of you know, bot that like what's the way to actually explain this in a graceful way? There's like you know, at the end of the day, your off-chain bot still, if it was making a trade on Pangolin, would be like doing an on-chain action, but like it can be like, checking every 3 seconds or every half a second or every like a tenth of a second to see if there is this opportunity. And then like, it's like checking also if like, for example, in your case, like it was like on Binance, if price is different by, enough, like buy here, sell there. Why would that, like, the bot wouldn't really ever be on chain is your point, like the actual.
Well, so here's the question, right? So the thing is, these bots have access to treasury. So if they're going to buy that $30,000, they need $30,000 to actually make the trade. So when I was originally thinking of Camelot, I was like, okay, well, if they have access to treasury, well, then you need consensus about what they can spend. So if I'm saying here's an arbitrage opportunity, I want the treasury or all the other bots or all the other validators that have access to that treasury to agree. Because like this bot might find like a 10K arbitrage, but bot B might find like a 20,000. So which one do we actually take? So when I first thought about it, I thought, okay, well then let's make these bots agree. And how do you make them agree? Consensus. And then I was like, okay, well, yeah, you can add that consensus layer, but then the thing is you're going to get dominated because
this is like a too many cooks in the kitchen thing, right? It's like, if you're just making a decision yourself versus asking for people, that's like what consensus is going to be, right? It just happens really fast, but not fast enough to be faster than not having to ask the question in the first place.
Exactly. Like think about like when you have a meeting at work and stuff and there's 5 people and like everyone has an opinion and no one can just like align versus like if it's your call at a restaurant, you choose your food. You can do it immediately, right? Versus like, imagine you go to your missus, well, what do you want to eat? Oh, maybe I'll eat this. And, like that's the kind of thing. So I think the way, yeah, just pick anything. So I think the way you solve that though, is you give the bots license to do something based upon their performance. So in a game, as an example, what you'd want consensus on maybe would be the result of a battle. Like, because that's something that you want to confirm on chain. And in the arbitrage example, the way that I think I found a way around it is the bots get rewarded based upon how profitable they are. So let's say bot A makes like an average of like $20,000 a month in arbitrage profits. Therefore, we have consensus or voting to give that bot a bigger budget. So that bot then can have like a budget to spend up to a certain amount every time, right? And then that's the consensus. So everyone's agreeing on that bot's basically spending limits. And then they're still free to compete fairly. But in a game, I think
giving the bots, like instead of like requiring to ask like, is this cool, everyone, like guys, like should we order this appetizer to share? You're saying like, well, like last time Justin ordered an appetizer, it was pretty good. Like we're gonna bump his credit limit up. Like you have like the right to choose like 2 appetizers next time. We're spending $30 on apps for us. But like $100, okay, that's like a consensus transaction. And like then you're ceding some ground to a bot that doesn't need to have consensus in it still, but maybe that's the trade-off.
Well, because all the bots are sharing the treasury, so so the thing is their decisions impact the group. So if a bot goes mental or like doesn't perform well, everyone loses money. So you've got to make sure those bots are all aligned for the greater DAO. Like another thing, I love thought experiments, but I was talking to Dennis, the guy that did this Below the Mountain game, which if you haven't checked out, you should check it out. It's pretty cool. But basically the thought experiment was like, how do you make these games fair and not like kind of weighted towards whales? And one of the things we're talking about is like, imagine like you were the richest player, or you had like the most resources in the game. But then as you got closer to being the richest, the poorer their stats would increase. So let's say, for example, it was like a fighting game and you're like, nah, you own.
This definitely happens. Did you ever play Mario Kart? Like I like fully think this is the example. Like I can't prove it, but I actually am sort of like a weird like Nintendo purist. Like I like just only play N64 games. That's maybe weird about me. But like so in like Mario Kart 64, like if you're in first place, everyone else is going faster than you. There's no question about it. They also get better items when they go through the like item blocks, and maybe like there's like a cool philosophical principle called like maximin. Maybe this is going off the deep end, but it's like this principle that like you like sort of like there's egalitarian societies where you try to make everything equal for everyone. There's like utilitarian societies where like the goal is to like maximize cumulative happiness, but like right, you could have like one person who's like super happy and some people that are like very unhappy. As long as it added up to more happiness, that would be like what utilitarianism goes for. And like maximin is like more about like trying to bring up the bottom. I think that's kind of what's happening almost in Mario Kart, or in your example with the mining game.
But Mario Kart's like the perfect example. Like I love that because it's one of the funnest, like, and this is maybe my criticism of GameFi and why I haven't jumped in as deep as perhaps others, is like Mario Kart is like that epitome, is like, let's make a game that you could play for like 50 years and it will still be fun. Like I play Mario Kart with my kid. He can't, like, he bashes the controllers and he doesn't know what he's doing, but he still gives it a go, like we play it on the Switch. And like, it's timeless. Like, because the thing is, like, I played with my nephews and they're still competitive, like, so yeah, I think that's a great example.
Can they pick up power sliding though?
Yeah. Yeah, it's such an interesting, like, I mean, I think that's like, it's definitely why I like blockchain, is like, that unequal distribution of wealth. Like where I grew up, like that was crazy, that, and the distribution of wealth. Like you'd have people driving like Mercedes and living in these crazy houses with like security. Like in Joburg, man, like Joburg's crazy, bro. Like, so Joburg, like everyone had, like, I'll tell you a story. Again, I know it's not quite DeFi, but like this story, like most people think I'm talking shit. Like, especially when I got to Australia, like I had to stop telling people stories from like South Africa because they're like, nah, you're talking shit. But like, I bought a house in Joburg in like Randburg, and like me and my mates bought it together. Like we were young, like 20 odd or whatever, and like and we just pooled our money together and we bought this house. And then like we got robbed a lot. Like, so like these dudes kept robbing us, right? So we had like dogs. So we had like German Shepherds. I think we had like 4 dogs at one point, but we're still getting robbed. So we're like, okay, fuck. Like, what are we going to do, right? Like, we need to get like security. So then we got like security that like drives through the neighborhood, like 24-hour security. But then the thing is, our electric fence, they kept cutting the electric fence. So the whole house had like walls all the way around with like barbed wire and then electric fence. So then like we got a security expert in. This oak comes in and he's like, oh yeah, nah, like we're going to put in laser beams all over your house. So they put in like laser beams, like as a perimeter. So if anyone breaks the laser beam, it then triggers the alarm in the house. And then from that alarm, it triggers a security company so they can rush over to you before anything happens. So this guy's sales pitch to me, his upsell was, oh, we can install these little mines that we dig into the ground. So if someone triggers this laser beam, this thing pops up and hits them with like tear gas and stuff. And his sales pitch was like, so then you can run out the house and kick them before the cops come.
Wait, is it really intense in Joburg? It's like there's like regular robbery. There's like total like free for all when it comes to that. Like,
so Joburg's actually gotten safer. But the thing is, it's because everyone has privatized security. So because the government's so terrible there, everyone has to privatize their own stuff. So what that means is it's safe, but the thing is everyone lives in cages. So you live in these gilded cages. So like you live in security blocks, and then everyone pulls together money, and then there's like a security gate. So before you can go into the apartments or townhouses, you got to go through security. And then like once you get home, you don't leave. Like you're in, So you go to work, you come home, you're locked in. Like, and that's, for me, this is the result of an unequal like distribution of wealth. Because what happened was the apartheid government, like for a long time, they kind of created these very unethical and very unfair class system. And what happened was you got people that got super wealthy and people that got super poor, and bitterness and hatred and all of these kind of side effects started creeping into society. And it created this very violent culture. Yeah, so like that's why I'm like a massive believer in like equitable distribution of wealth, and that's why blockchain. Yeah, you got to think about this, right? It's transparent. Like it's very like if you're stealing money, like I know when V got hacked, like you could see that in real time. You know that hack happened. So yeah, blockchain does offer
Yeah,
a
like
lot of.
if someone interacts with that wallet and it gets sent to Coinbase, they're caught red-handed, right? There
That's
might be
it.
ways a little bit like to make it harder for you to identify yourself, but yeah, if it's going on through a blockchain, you're operating a beautifully transparent environment.
Yeah, and there's options. If you don't like this project or this stable coin or there's like sovereign government, like you don't choose your sovereign government. I mean, I chose Australia. I mean, but the thing is, like, we had to do so much to get into here, right? But like most people, they're forced to deal under the financial policies of their sovereign nation that they were born in. They don't really have a lot of say. Whereas blockchain, you actually do have a say to some degree. Yeah, which is interesting.
It's super cool. Fascinating world. What did like with Ascenders? I guess it's a little bit of like a little bit secretive right now, but like we're probably just. I mean, I'm gonna play it for sure when it comes out because I
Yeah,
want to see like what Web3 Zelda looks like. The
like yeah. I mean, this
I
is some
kind of
crazy,
like related
crazy
to
prediction.
art. Let's see. What are GTA?
GTA. I mean, that's crazy.
Design director, head of development. Wow. Oh
Spartan
yeah, I think I
Capital.
looked up. I think I looked up Jackson Poon, and there's a. I think that Paramount Capital does a lot of investing into GameFi and like DeFi protocols.
Okay. I mean, it looks
Building
awesome.
games is just so much fun. Like at the end of the day, like I do totally believe that games are going to be the gateway drug into crypto. I've been saying this a lot recently. It's definitely going to be the truth. If you look at like, I don't even remember the timing, like 2008, 2007, I don't know, like around then, like when like mobile games were becoming like super popular, and all of a
Mm.
sudden, like you were wondering like how many games you can like put on your or like you're like, oh, do I really need this many apps on my iPhone?
Yeah,
Sort of thing,
yeah.
right? But like mobile games just like went crazy, and I
But
think
like,
that like yeah, we're in that stage for crypto right now, I think.
do you? And I might be completely wrong on this. Like, I'm often wrong. But like, in 2017, there was this gluttony of L1s. Like everyone and their dog was releasing an L1, and like how many survived, right? Like Terra, I think Terra was in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's. Oh, sorry,
Mhm.
Cosmos was it. Anyway,
Yeah.
but like a lot of them died off, right? Like most of them didn't survive 4 years. Like, and I see so many games popping up, and like I'm like I just think like so many of them just won't survive.
I think that it's going to be one of those things where there's a ton of games that are created, and that's true of the regular gaming world too, right? Like, you know,
That's a good
you
point.
make it, you try to sell it. Like the the thing about like something that I learned that I thought was interesting, and I'm going to be like reaching for straws when I pull out numbers here. These are all going to be kind of maybe directional, but like um, I'm pretty sure like when you actually go and like try to make a game, um, when you want to like list it on Steam or get it into Target or sell it like at all, you're faced with like all of these different supply chain costs, and I think like less than 50% of profits go back to the developers of the game. Um,
Yeah.
then there's like huge marketing costs and stuff like that. So the like cost of building games kind of like becomes very high, so hard to like make money off it that like an indie game designer like really has to strike gold to have a chance. The idea with crypto is it's kind of like removing that like barrier. Like the game, like you can start playing it just by buying an NFT. So like distributing the game, like you
Mm.
can build it in like Unity or WebGL or something like that, and it's just like totally, right at someone's fingertips if they do like want to ape into playing it, and those profits go like right to the game. And the cool thing is those like profits are usually being shared with the players of the game that help build it. Like if you look at YouTube, um, if you were an early YouTube content creator, you don't get anything other, like you got some ad revenue, but they probably changed up the algos, and all of a sudden, like, there's probably a few times where you would remember that your viewership just like arbitrarily dropped off one day for no good reason. And it's probably just because the algorithm changed and like sort of conned you there. So like these games are giving people um, access, or it's giving developers access to people without all these middlemen, and it's actually distributing those like extra rewards to the users.
And a question for you: do we think that there will be a decentralized Steam, like a competitor to Steam?
It's interesting. Well, Steam's really like a game marketplace. They don't. This might be. I'm actually not familiar with. I've played Steam games, but I don't know. Do they provide a similar service, like a game engine, or is it only just the part that like I'm thinking about, where it's mainly the like marketplace for games?
So
Do they
am
like
I
compete
sure?
with like Unity and like Unreal? Yeah, I see your Ascenders tab.
Yeah, so I actually play, like, I'm a PC guy. I mean, I play PS. Like, I've got a, like, I'll tell everyone, like, I got a Switch. Like, the Switch is what I use when I travel, right? Like, most people work on the plane. Like, I'll be honest, I don't work on the plane. I play Zelda. Like, that's what I do on the plane. Maybe I should work, but I don't know. It's like, yeah. I've got a Switch. I don't have a PS5 or an Xbox like I used to, but then what I did was I built a gaming PC, and then I just play Steam. So like I'll tell you, like, in Steam, I've got Cuphead, I've got Dead Cells, I got XCOM 2, obviously Civilization. I've always got Grand Theft, Witcher, and I play PC games. So the thing is, that's my key way that I get games. So and where I like it is, it's on any device. So if I go to a laptop, like I got a new laptop, I can play if I wanted to play my Steam games on the flight to Barcelona, I can just play like the kind of games still there, right? So I think Steam is awesome, if I'm being perfectly honest. Like, I'm a big fan of it. Yeah. So I just think it's like, because at the moment it's like crypto, right? How do you find out about things? You go on Twitter, you probably got some crypto influencer that's probably, invested in the token, shilling you new games or new projects. So then you got to like wade through all the potential conflicts of interests and bad actors shilling you things to then get to this token. And like, that's like one of my biggest hates. Like, it probably hasn't served me well, because like, influencers do have a certain role to play, but like, I think there's no accountability. I view like influencers on Twitter like the way that I view media. Like, media should be objective, and it shouldn't like be in control of like governments and corporations. Like, it should be, yeah. Like, I like investigative journalism, and I think like what a Steam would do, would it be like, even if it's just voting for games, is it would create a way for you to wade through all of the misinformation and disinformation and get to a fair place where, like, okay, invest in this game or play this game, not just like, well, this game, this dude on Twitter, he gets, $1 million if this game's successful. So therefore he's telling his 100,000 followers and they're all tweeting it. And meanwhile, the game's actually trash. Like, so I think a Steam is needed in this space.
So you just are looking at Steam mainly as like an objective marketplace for games, so people can like find out what to play. The interesting thing about like crypto games is like you can see the amount of people that are playing them theoretically through like even Snowtrace, or whatever your go-to explorer is for the network you're on. And I wonder if that's like almost already sort of there. I'm not sure if there's like a need for the Steam part. I'm sure someone will be Web3 Steam, or raise funds under the premise of being Web3 Steam. but I'm not sure. It's a good question.
So let's go back to like a first principle. So Steam creates like a rating engine. Same thing with Airbnb. So like I'd argue like a lot of the software as a service that kind of like really picked up, like one of their key new things they brought was accountability to the market. So back in the day, you could buy a fridge from, someone, and if it was absolutely crap, well, you couldn't go online and bitch about it and give it a 1-star review. And, there wasn't any accountability for these brands to deliver their products up to a certain standard. Whereas Airbnb, for example, it keeps hosts in check, rightly or wrongly. You're going to go out of your way to make sure that people, if you host in an Airbnb, you provide a good service. And I think that's the kind of cool element is like, you got accountability now for retail or like the market. And that's what I think of as a fair market. Like I often, like I studied economics and like Adam Smith and, the Wealth of Nations. And there's always these kind of principles he talks about for a fair market. Transparency is one. So knowledge must be free. The problem in today's society is knowledge is free, but it's often twisted by so many other things. So you want transparency and you want that information to be true. Now, true is one of the most powerful things, but it's subjective to humans. So how do you get truth? So like, how do I know if let's say, for example, I go to Ascenders, right? Or let's say another game. I don't want to use an existing game. And like everyone, everyone with money says, no, I should go there. And I go there and I've got my $1,000 and maybe I'm coming from a third world country and $1,000 to me is like a month's worth of salary. And I invest my money in that game and the whales just smash me within a day or two. Now, how do we create a rating system where that person can say, oh yeah, nah, don't do this. You're gonna get mugged off, and to protect, I guess, other people. And that's where, I think that's where Steam or something equivalent could help protect players. Because that's the thing, right? Like, ultimately, I was talking about this again last night. Ultimately, scams. Ultimately, predatory behavior, ultimately all these things that we're seeing in traditional financial markets, they're harmful to our industry. They delegitimize what we're doing.
It's true, but there's always like a balancing act to that too, right? Like, I don't know if there would be a lot of information out there. Well, I don't know. Things like get colored in, and how do you actually create truth? It seems pretty expensive. Yeah. So I guess that's like, what's happening with blockchains too, right? Like, I don't know how you turn like just generalized information into data packets and like have everyone validate them yet. But if like, please tell me, I'll go make a lot of money. Like, at least if people like bottle up their transactions and send them in a formatted way on Avalanche, then we can let the network of validators say like, oh, yep, this looks good. fits like, this is like what happened next in the world. But yeah, like, I'm not sure. I think that it makes sense for there to be reputation engines for the actual games though. I think that's like what you're really getting at. It's like, what do you care about though? Do you care that there's like, I think games like brag about their like amount of users. You probably like, I probably like aped into buying Assassin's Creed and like played it for like the total of like 2.5 hours. I wish I played it more, but like thought it was incredible graphics and just seemed like fun. Like ultimately people are buying into games because they look like they're fun. But I think there's this new element with like crypto that like it's also potentially going to be like profitable because you do fundamentally own the things you earn in the game, which like kind of does the marketing for it, but it definitely creates a bias.
And then you start getting into philosophy pretty quickly, right? Like, so then you start talking about a free market versus a laissez-faire market versus a regulated market. So, and then you start talking about, so one of the things about crypto is like, no one's there to protect you. Like, if you make a bad decision, like that's on you, which I would argue in a lot of cases is a closer representation of a fair market, right? Like, once you start getting people, this is what I think governments do too, right? They're like, we're going to protect you. It's like, let me just take all this money, and then we'll protect you. But like, we ain't doing it for free. Like, heavens forbid, like we're doing it for free. So, so maybe I don't know. Like, it's a philosophical question. And I don't like the problem with philosophy is like you could argue so many different viewpoints, and each have merits.
It's sort of fascinating stuff. At the end of the day, you just like ape into games, and like you're gonna choose the ones that you like the most, and like, yeah, I don't know, like. So what do you think it is that like attracted you about this game in particular? It's like it's similar to something that you like related to like in like back in the day, like in youth, like um, playing Zelda to seem familiar. Like what do you think you liked about Zelda the most, and like what do you think like sort of triggered that like pattern recognition for you to say like this is like that?
It's a good question. So immediately this landscape is pretty much the Zelda when like Link comes out of the cave and like he awakens from his sleep and he comes out and he views the whole world. So like immediately they've kind of like they've drawn me into that. And I played Breath of the Wild. Like it's one of very few games that I replay. Like generally, yeah. And Zelda for me is because like it's super exploratory. Like you can choose where to have fun. So you can solve puzzles, which like I quite like. I like solving puzzles. You can engage in combat. The story is pretty cool. It's just fun, like you can go as deep or as shallow as you want. And the game mechanics are really good. Yeah, like I'm a big fan of Zelda. Like there's a lot to love about it. Obviously, like I think I'm like depends on the mood, right? Like I also like kind of like but Zelda is just one of those games you can live in it. I think that's the key thing, like it feels livable. And like I think this makes a lot of sense in this regard because if you were owning like pieces of Zelda, like if you had a piece of land and you had a castle, and it would make that ownership feel even more real. Like yeah, like when they talk here and they say like, what do you create the economy, players develop the land. So this is something I was thinking about with like DeFi kingdoms. So I was like, okay, cool. Let me go have a look. So I've been playing a lot with, or trying
The
to play a
actual
lot with
transactional parts could easily be made into like crypto elements of the game, and then you're running around, and like at the end of the day, like what matters is that like Justin sold his sword at this castle, and like maybe that castle was like a pangolin castle, so it takes like point there's some fee, or penguins like doing free marketplace or something like that, or whatever it is. But like you could trade ownership of the castle, and like those fees could be controlled by whoever then owns the castle afterwards.
but like so where I mean that's all cool, but the thing is like what I think is like amazing would be amazing is imagine you had this map, right? And what this map was, land was owned by game publishers, and they almost have like an SDK that allowed you to create games within the context of that game. So if it was Zelda, so with
Mini game
Zelda, you could
like that.
you could create your own like puzzles, or you could create Minecraft. Like you really put
Yeah,
the and then like that way, then if I was a game producer and I wanted to come into DeFi Kingdoms, I could buy like a plot of land, yeah. And then within that plot of land, I would be able, kind of like Decentraland. Decentraland allows you to build buildings via like a unit. I think it's, can't remember. I think it's like a CAD based standard, right? So if you build virtual buildings in like a specific CAD standard, you can import them into Decentraland. And then that's how, like, I think, was it Gucci or I don't know, one of those luxury brands. That's how they got their building in Decentraland. And so this is the way I see it happening with these kind of things. Like, if I'm going to buy land, what am I going to do with the land? Like, currently, I think people buy land really for speculative reasons. But I think the true movement in metaverses is when you can actually, yeah, like Decentraland does it, but I think GameFi has a much better scope to do cool stuff.
So interesting. Yeah, like people bought in like a valued land near Snoop Dogg, where he bought a plot of land. It was either in the Sandbox or in Decentraland, I forget which one, but yeah, like people were buying up the land like near, like being like Snoop Dogg's neighbor was valued very high. Loved that. But my like
Well,
big question is like there's so much land that's being created, right? Like I can go and create a new world, right? And then like, there's more land all of a sudden. And like, it's like how much time, like in real life, like, I am in this like one physical location right now and I can only be in one. And it's not like I can just like snap my fingers and like be in Bermuda or something like that. Not yet, at least. So like with like metaverse, though, like people talk about metaverse as this like singular thing, but like there are, if you're trying to make an analogy to like the like real world, there's definitely multiple worlds, so it's kind of hard to like keep up the analogy sometimes.
well, that's the thing. There's like, and as an investor, so before I started playing these games, I've only, I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm part of A Ventures. So I was like, oh, maybe like we could try get like A Ventures to kind of buy a piece of land in Decentraland, and we can put something up there, and maybe we could do a business. But then like I look at like, why would I choose Decentraland versus something like DeFi Kingdoms? How do I make those decisions? And the problem is, it's my brain often it's about the tech. So then I look at that, but I think that's the wrong way to look at these things. I think sometimes it's more likely about the narrative. And Decentraland, even though it looks like a poor 2015 game in a lot of ways, is all everyone's already moved there. So it creates this like kind of unstoppable force. Like regardless of the technology, once enough brands or enough money flows into an ecosystem, it becomes almost like the banks, too big to fail.
Right, but it
And
also becomes like saturated, and then like there's like real estate opportunities that like people like might be aping into now that like weren't like obvious no brainers like 5 years ago. So I think that's going to be true with like the like digital real estate that people are kind of starting to innovate with in like crypto world. By the way, like this is for some reason like I can't get this like new thing the chicken game did out of my head. I'm like really obsessed with generative art, and like like Crypto Punks like was an early like pioneer in that, or Crypto Kitties. Um, like it's almost like you have 10 pairs of shirts, 10 pairs of pants, and like 10 hats, and then like there's 1,000 combinations. So they like started with like chickens, but recently they made this like farmland concept where you like actually you start with like a 1 by 1 plot of land, and it can expand over time to be a 5 by 5 by like burning egg. Um, but you're constantly every single time you do that and like level up the like bigness of your land, it adds like another plot. Um, you are like essentially revealing pieces of land over time. It definitely reminded me of some of our like zero knowledge proof conversations that we've had in the past. But yeah, it was like allowing you to like reveal little bits of your own world. I don't know if they'll be like stitched together in some sort of way at any point in time, but I thought that was a really interesting like novel concept. Like you're essentially like paying to like expand your land. So like I've been trying to like think if anyone's gonna like actually put land like on a globe, like make a lot of hexagons or something
yeah,
like that.
and I mean, it's a great. So the thing is, and then so can you do a return on investment? So let's say, for example, you're paying X amount, like $10 to expand your land. Does your land become more profitable based upon the expansion? Because
I think
that's what
in
I'd be looking
chicken,
at.
one of the things they're doing, and I think they're preparing to launch Rooster, which is like I think the chickens will mate with the roosters, and there's going to be a game where they fight, which will be really interesting to see. But like they're doing something with like farming that like I honestly should probably like a little further before I like pretend like I understand it entirely. But um, the size of your land controls how much feed you can keep in it. And if you like stake LP in their farmland, um, you get more. It's like staking in a farm, like staking your LP and farming. So like the size of your land controls how much feed you can have in total. How much like reward you can accumulate. And I think that they're going to make something. They've hinted at like there being like a fertilizer token or something like that. And maybe like the more fertile your land is, the higher multiplier you would get from staking your LP in the farm, which has some like maximum capacity to it based on its size. But they're all the DeFi primitives and gamifying in such a beautiful way that I'm sort of obsessed.
That's what I like about DeFi Kingdom, right? Like but the thing is, it's also a certain target market. So when I first saw DeFi Kingdoms, I was like, oh yeah, like this is just going to dominate dexes, right? Because it's gamifying. But then it's actually only gonna, like, what I noticed is like it alienated some other people I showed. So some people, like, if you're not a gamer or into that, like, you'd rather go to a standard dex because you're in DeFi, not for gaming and those concepts. So, but what I think is interesting, I think you shared it on LinkedIn, is how people from a certain generation, the younger generation, are getting into the metaverse via GameFi. And I think like that's what we're going to see over the next 5 to 10 years is as these people get older, they enter the job market, more money comes in. It's going to be like the old fogies like us that are like kind of left behind, right?
Yeah. So interesting to see like playing out. Yeah, like I think that this like breeding concept and like in general, like there's like V tokenomics in DeFi right now, and like breeding within like NFT games is like proving to be like a new reason to spend tokens, and it generally is like a burn mechanism. So like if I was like a game right now, I'd be trying to find ways to do like crafting or breeding, like give people a reason to like pay the tokens, take them out of circulation, and it's been sort of like a fascinating thing. So I see like the chicken team like ramping up to like add in Rooster, and then they have this like whole farming gamification, and like they'll probably like launch like breeding in a battle game. But it's definitely coming at the whole DeFi concept and gamifying it rather than like starting with a game and like adding in elements that like allow people to trade assets in like a sort of decentralized way. So there's like two directions, right? You can start with the game, or you can start with the assets. And I think that like DeFi Kingdoms like started more on the game side of the spectrum.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting one too, right? Like, because it's almost like these aren't pure games and they're not pure DeFi. It's like they've married the two concepts together. So like, but also the thing is, like for you as an example, like how much mental availability do you have? Like how many of these games do you think you could learn and like actively play? Like if you think, like if I wanted to make money on Krabata, let's use Krabata, DeFi Kingdoms, and Chicken. Like, do you think, because that's a full-time job. Like for me, that's
realistically, I'm in like deep on 2 of the 3. Like I like really want to know everything about DeFi Kingdoms. I just like haven't like fully dove in yet. You're right. Like I think one of the interesting things about games is they have this ability to like, at least for a lot of people that love games, like a great game can really just take over a ton of your mental energy. And people love like doing things when they have an edge or like finding like that like advantage, coming up with cool strategies, how to play and like how to win more often. So I think like games do a great job of like taking that like mental bandwidth and like really getting people to like focus on something. So yeah, I don't think that you can play like a dozen games and be the best at all of them. Like specialization definitely factors into that.
Yeah. Sorry, you can hear my kids. You can see it's coming up to the end of Degen Hour by the how loud my kids are shouting.
Gotta play Mario Kart now.
That's exactly it. It's like, yeah, go break my Switch controller, mate. Should we call it quits? I think that was quite an awesome session. Like, I think we covered.
Yeah, I think it was good stuff. Like, let's pick up with the GameFi topic for next week. But thanks for the time and thanks for everyone for tuning in.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week.